This week on the roofing news, a reality TV star turned contractor is being sued. We have the details. We'll look into criminal history of the roofer who tried to assassinate Trump. I react to a crazy story from DIY couple. And stay tuned for some good news. We cover one roofer's amazing recovery journey. Welcome back to the Roofing News. If you have a news story to share, send it to Sydney@roofinginsights.com. Now let's go to the news.
Fines, scams, and jail time.
First up this week is a name you might recognize if you ever watched the reality TV show 19 Kids and Counting. That's right, it's the Duggar family. They have a lot of scandals over the years, and this is just the latest. One of the adult kids, Jason Duggar, is being sued.
Jason Duggar, star of the reality show 19 Kids and Counting, being sued in Benton County. The lawsuit alleges Duggar failed to perform repairs on a home where he was assigned as a contractor and for allegedly not having a valid contractor's license. Mark Thompson filed the suit against Madison Holding LLC and Duggar earlier this week. The lawsuit claims Duggar's contractor's license cannot be found in the state contractor's licensing board. According to paperwork, Thompson is seeking sustained damages and punitive damages.
You would think with a famous name, they would be a little bit more careful. We checked with the Arkansas licensing board, and there's no listing for Duggar or Madison Holdings. So far, it's not looking good for Jason Duggar. If you're the contractor, please make sure you get a U license if your state requires you to do so.
Solar news.
On to some better news. Texas is the #1 state for utility-scale solar, according to a new report. This is the first time they beat California on solar farm capacity. By the end of this year, Texas is expected to make up 35% of the United States utility-scale capacity. So what about residential? It should be no surprise that California is still #1 in that category, and they are still #1 overall when it comes to solar installs. But many reports predict that the Texas market will grow and could beat them in the next few years. More stories are coming, but first I have to give a shout out to this week's sponsor, Solar Blaster Fans. These solar-powered fans will keep your attic cool and will help your roof to last longer. Solar Blaster fans push out heat and moisture, protecting your roof from mold, mildew, and wood rot. What I love about Solar Blaster is that it works with the passive vents that are already on your roof and makes it more efficient. Plus, it's a great selling point for homeowners who want to boost their home's energy efficiency. Check out solarblasterfans.com today to learn more. And I want you to meet the actual founder of Solar Blasters. He happened to come to our studio for the podcast today. Dan, come here, brother.
Hey.
So, I'll give you the mic. I'm gonna put him on the spot really quick. He did not know this coming. So we just did the podcast. Guys, I promise you, if you watch that interview, you will be inspired. Then give one advice to roofing contractors who do not sell or install solar fans yet.
Use my product to gain an advantage over your competitors.
Guys, go check out our podcast and go check out, what's your website?
solarblasterfans.com.
Love it.
Fines, scams, and jail time.
1 week ago, there was a second assassination attempt on former President Trump. The attacker was a man named Ryan Roth. By now, you probably have heard that he has a record. But did you know he used to be a roofer? According to news reports, Roth owned a company called United Roofing in North Carolina before he moved to Hawaii. We looked into lawsuits against United Roofing, and man, there are a lot of them. We found at least 30 civil judgments against Roth Company between 2000 and 2017. They were brought by individuals, roofing suppliers, and insurance companies who were owed money. We also found 9 OSHA judgments against United Roofing from 2000 to 2008. With all of these cases, it's actually surprising that United Roofing kept going for so long. Ryan Roth has been charged with the possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. More charges are expected. It's safe to say he won't be roofing again anytime soon. Next one is a story so crazy I have to react to it. It comes from a YouTuber named Yami, aka the Latina next door. She does a lot of home projects with her husband, who is an engineer. Here's the setup. They are building a farmhouse on their property. They had a great experience with their framer and they hired a roofer based on the framer's recommendation. From that point, it was downhill.
All right, I think we have the most drama-filled episode for you in our farmhouse film.
The first red flag we saw was we were working on a Sunday and they show up at like 5 or 6 o'clock on a Sunday.
So then they're like, oh yeah, we're the roofers. And we're like, oh. And they're like, we're here to start the roof. And we're like, do you have enough time? They're like, oh yeah, we have enough time. And of course, they don't get very far because the sun's going down.
Right, but who shows up at your house on a Sunday?
That was a little bizarre.
Dusk? We're like, okay, that's kind of weird.
We gave them the benefit of the doubt, again, because they were recommended by our framer, who did an exceptional job.
Our roof has valleys where different...
That's a steep roof.
And within that valley, you're supposed to put this barrier that's called ice water sheathing, which is like an extra layer of protection to go down the valleys because, when it rains, all of it goes down into the valley. And he's like, hey, man, they didn't even put any of that stuff down. And I'm like, you're right. I was like, but I ordered it. Like, we had a ton of rolls out there to put everything. So, I immediately call and talk to them. I was like, hey, why aren't you putting this stuff up? And they're like, oh, we didn't think we needed it. I was like, what do you mean you don't think we needed it? I bought it.
Oh, boy.
Here, use it. Well, we're sorry. We're just going to keep going. They weren't showing up at the beginning of the day. They were also showing up like the middle of the day in the afternoon. So I don't know if they were working on another property.
Probably.
Just trying to fit us in, which is fine if you're doing the work correctly. Then we had our final straw, which really set me off.
Well, apparently one of the gentlemen that didn't like Nelson's handling of them not doing their job properly was disgruntled, and he showed up after sunset when it was dark out here.
Yeah, he drove back onto our property and decided to drink on our properties, which, again, he may have already been drinking while he was working. And I guess he just got upset, came back and started drinking on our property and was busting beer bottles against the trash container we had out there.
And that's what our daughter was hearing when she went out to take the dog
Throwing
out.
bottles from the roof?
Nelson was not going to let that fly. So Nelson went out there.
Yeah, and, when I got closer, I think they realized who was walking up to them, and they just immediately closed the doors and then ran off the property.
But we recognized the car.
I want to be fair here and say we're only getting one side of the story, but it looks pretty bad for those roofers. Luckily, these homeowners did get a roof fixed and completed with another contractor. That's the problem with referrals in general. That's why so many people do not recommend contractors, because they don't want to be liable for the work. If you recommend someone, make sure it's a good recommendation. That's why I always say I don't give bad recommendations. That's why I started directory.com. If I recommend someone, I stand behind it, because you never want to look bad. And if you recommend someone who screw up so bad, I feel like you should be liable for it, especially if those people suffer financial loss or they have to redo something. I mean, don't give bad recommendation, guys. I wish I didn't have to cover this next story, but it is important to share, especially because we had someone close to the case reach out to us. Wisconsin roofer James Emerson has been sentenced to 25 years for child enticement. Emerson is the owner of Renew Roofing. He was arrested in January after having sexual contact with the child. He pled guilty and will serve 15 years in prison with another 10 years of extended supervision. Someone close to this situation reached out to us to share this story, and they asked to stay anonymous. They believe that Renew Roofing has changed ownership. Some employees left after Emerson's arrest, but others have stayed within the company. This person also asked us to share a statement. When everything you know is on the line and the weight of silence feels suffocating, remember that the truth is your strength. Speaking out against injustice, especially for the innocent, may seem terrifying, but protecting the vulnerable is more important than the fear of losing everything you have and have worked for. Silence allows harm to continue. Don't let fear drown out what needs to be heard. Stand up, speak out, be the voice for those who are silenced.
Good news.
Last but not least is the good news, and we have two stories this week. The first one is an amazing journey of recovery. In 2022, Stephen Lambert was working on the roof when he fell 40 feet through a skylight. He broke 23 bones, including every bone in his face, parts of his neck, wrist, femur, and hip. He suffered 3 brain bleeds and was in a coma for 5 weeks. When Stephen woke up, he had a long physical recovery ahead of him. As a former meth and heroin addict, he did not want to risk relapsing by taking pain medications. Despite all of that, Stephen made a full recovery and stayed sober. He credits his family, friends, and his company Certified Roofing Solutions for taking care of him after the fall. What an amazing story. That's not the only good news this week. A roofer in Erie, Pennsylvania, stepped up to help some pets in need.
Angelo's Roofing is gifting the Erie Humane Society with a new roof in what they are calling Roof-A-Pet. The owner says this is an addition to their Angelo's Roof-A-Vet for veterans.
The Erie community has been really good to Angelo's Roofing, so this is our way of giving back. And the Humane Society does an awesome job with the animals, and so it's really good to help support them in our community.
The new roof is being put on a building that was purchased by the Humane Society in 2015 for their clinic and crematory. The executive director of the Humane Society says many conversations on replacing the roof have taken place.
In 2017, we opened it as a pet wellness clinic, but when we purchased the building, the roof was already seeing kind of its end of life, if you will.
Finca says the old shingles are being taken off down to the wood for their work to begin. The executive director of the Humane Society says receiving this roof helps them to focus on their mission of caring for the area's furry friends.
For us, for him and his crew to donate their time and everything to the Humane Society allows us to focus on our mission and make sure that we can put all of our efforts into doing our strategic fundraising for our shelter pets. So this really offsets, it's almost a $20,000 donation, and us focusing on the animals at the shelter and not having to fundraise for a roof that we were very much in need in.
The owner says he has a personal, heartfelt connection to the shelter that helped fuel his decision for all animals in the area. He says he adopted a pit bull from the Humane Society in 2011 named Charlie.
They take in a lot of strays, and the clinic offers a lot of different veterinary services. So it's just our way of saying thanks, because we really support what they do with the animals.
Sometimes I feel like we take better care of animals than people when I follow some of the news, but we'll have to see it. Shout out to Angelo's Roofing. If you like our news, please subscribe, like, and comment something about today's episode, not for my ego, but for YouTube algorithms, so more people will see it in their recommendation. And the Russian proverb of the week is "Скупой платит дважды." The cheap person pays twice. Скупой, cheap person, платит, pays, дважды, 2 times. Literally, like if you're too cheap, you usually pay the price later, and it's probably going to be double the cost. Comment below what you think about today's episode, and I'll see you guys next week.